Alright, welcome back guys, welcome back to another video on chakra-ui, and this video is going to be the start of a new series, and this series is going to be called Built with Chakra. In this series, I'm going to try like a new way of showing you how to build things with chakra. Now, this series is going to assume that you already know how to use chakra-ui. If you don't know how to do that yet, you can check out my course below, or you can check out the rest of the free videos that I have here on my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can build this really nice and very professional login screen where you can have like proper nice feedback for the customer, and also it's really functional as well. So let me try to submit here and show you what I mean. And you can see here we have a loading state, and we can console log things here. And for this, we're going to be using Formic and Yob, which is the best way to build any form in React. Don't ever do it any other way. And yeah, the design looks clean and nice, and I like the purplish look. Hope you like it too. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. All right, so the first thing we need to do is add a center component to make sure that our login card is in the center of the screen. To do that, we need to specify H on the component to specify the height so that it's full screen, and add the background according to the design as well. Next, I need to make the actual card where the login content will be. I'll choose a stack component for this, since all the design elements are actually aligned vertically. I add a generous padding, box shadow, and white transparent background, and a final touch of some rounded corners. Nice, we have our card now. Beautiful. The first element I'll add to the card is going to be the logo. I'll use the image component from Chakra and add a maximum width prop of 70 pixels. I need to add a bit more of separation between that logo and the rest of the elements beneath it. For that, I'm going to use the margin button prop. Finally, I will center the image with mx equals auto. Awesome. After that, I'll proceed to add the text using a heading and text components, and adding proper styling and sizes as well. Notice here my use of the as prob to make sure that the heading is rendering an h1 tag to the DOM itself. Now, the form part is very juicy and has lots of details, so let's do the footer part first, and then we will come back to finish the form. To start with, I'm gonna add another stack component and use the justify prop to center everything. We'll change the colors of the text and add spacing of 3, which means 12 pixels or 0.75 rems. After that, I'm going to add a text component that is going to act as a div, utilizing the as prob as I did before. After that, we will add text align center to it to make sure that everything is aligned in the center. Simple? Simple. This way, I can use the text component as a wrapper, but still have control over the fonts inside it from the theme if I wish. After that, I'm going to add a span and add the designated text inside that span, and follow that up with a button, adding color scheme purple to it and a link variant. This will wrap up the sign up part. Lastly, to add the forgot password prompt using a button component with the same purple color scheme and the link variant to that. Awesome. So that is done with the simple parts. Easy peasy. Now, let's go on to the part that really matters, the form. To start with, you're far better off using a library for forms. I chose Formic along with Yob for validation. Very popular duo that works very nicely. Let's start with the basic setup for Formic. To do that, we need Formic component, and we use a render prop pattern that will carry all the function goodies that Formic gives us to make our life much easier. The render prop needs to render another Formic component, which is form. Inside that component, you can have all the inputs you want or need. Before we do that though, we need to fix the issues with Formic component complaining. Formic asks for two props that are mandatory. One is onSubmit, and the other is initial values. So let's add those. I have super simple code for onSubmit that will delay for a second the value to the console. For initial values, we can pass empty properties in an object that will decide the initial values, so that's just simple for now. Now onto the form itself. To start with, let's have a stack component that will serve as the main wrapper for the inputs to control the spacing between them. Next up, let's add two normal inputs for now. We will do some work on the input to make it better and for it to integrate with Formic, but let's finish up the rest of the form first. Let's add a simple checkbox to keep the user logged in using the same color scheme, purple color scheme. Finally, let's add the submit button. Notice how I use that is submitting that we get from Formic. It's a boolean that is true as long as the onSubmit function is running. Very handy. So we use that to handle the loading state on our button. Notice how I also add loading text, just for fun actually, but this can come handy if you want to add a bit of spice to your app. At this point, you can actually submit the form and see things working. But you can see that there is no value in the object in the console even if I fill the form up. This is because our input currently is not really hooked into the Formic context. More specifically, Formic doesn't control that input yet. You can fix this in different ways. You can use a Formic field component, which is a component that comes with Formic. But for an even better, more custom way, let's build our own custom input component, and you will see how simple this is with chakra-ui. So to hook up this component to the Formic context, we need to use a custom hook from Formic called useField. This will return two variables. One is field and the other is meta. Field is a set of props you need to pass directly to your input component, whatever the input component you choose, whether you want to choose one from chakra-ui or from material UI, whatever you want. While meta includes some helper properties coming from Formic that it indicates the state of that field, like error and touched and a couple of others. Now let's build the input itself. First, let's add a form control component from Chakra. This will be used to control the state of the input component that comes from Chakra. I'll add an ID and invalid prop to it. Notice the usage of error and touch from meta. This means the field is invalid if there is an error with this input and the user has touched this input and navigated away from it. Next up, let's add label based on a prop that might be passed on to our component. If we pass that prop, we render form label component. Next, let's add an input group component to house the input lift add-on component and the main input component itself. Input lift add-on component will be used to display an icon next to the input if passed through. Then now to actually hook our input to the context. Let's spread the field object along with any other props that we might want to pass through our component directly later on. Finally, let's use form helper text to show an error with the input if it happens. That should be it. Simple and to the point. This could be expanded and customized way much more in different ways to show validation, more better ways and so on, but this will do for now. Let's go back to the login screen and use it. Notice how I added label and left add-on to display the icon accordingly. Et voila, now the form is working. And it's all good, but we don't see any error with the input. For this, we need to use validation schema. Validation schema is used to explain the requirements on the values that the user can pass and also what error message to show when each requirement is not met. Very declarative and super easy way to handle errors. And yups, works perfectly with Formic. Best combo ever. So for this to work, we need to pass validation schema to Formic component. Now we need to actually write that validation schema. This is how we describe what to expect from the user. We know it's an object, then we need to describe the shape of that object. One property is email and it's a string, which is an email, and we pass the error message invalid email if this requirement is not met. Now we pass require because it's a required field and pass the message for that as well. Let's do the same thing for password. Now this works super well. Notice how we see the error underneath the input for each of them separately. Notice the border color change and that we can't actually submit if a required field is missing. There you have it, guys. This is it, a working form that's looking super slick and it's made with chakra-ui, Formic and Yup. If you like this video, leave it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content like this. And you know what, if you fancy getting your hands on this repo and the code itself, you can check out my Patreon below. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.